Stand with me as I welcome to the mic the father of our nation, the first Prime Minister of this country, St. Christopher-Nevis, Dr. the Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Simmonds.
Please, please. I know it is a common expression to talk about giving people flowers when they can still smell them. Well, the fragrance of these flowers, is so all-embracing and all-encompassing. Right? I don't think anybody has had such beautiful and fragrant flowers to smell, certainly in a long time. Thank you all very much. I recognize, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I recognize all of the important guests who have been here, members of Parliament, the leadership of Team Unity. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be a part of this. The former members of my administration who are here tonight. I want to thank them all. And I would like to ask them if they would stand for a minute. Please, all the former members of my administration who are here. I specifically want to thank all of you who have served with me from time to time, and to ask the audience to give these persons a resounding round of applause. Thank you. You see, tonight, I've been overwhelmed by all of the things that I have heard. And when my colleague, Tapley Seaton, spoke about all the various developments, I thought to myself, when you are in the midst of doing something, perhaps it is difficult for you to see the totality of all that you're doing. And you just work from day to day. You struggle on towards a goal, and you just keep going. And tonight, you have, in a sense, crystallized that journey and given me the opportunity, myself now, to sit and really look back at it. And if all of you have thought that my contribution to the country during the period of my administration was as outstanding as you have made it tonight, I want you to recognize that I could not have done it alone. And so I want to be sure that we give full credit to all the members of my administration who served with me during that period. I want also to thank the persons, many persons, who were not officially members of the administration, but who assisted, who gave ideas, who gave advice, who helped to keep the ship in the right direction. And there are many persons of all walks of life. There were persons, advisors, permanent secretary, ambassadors like Ambassador Byron here, the late Dr. William Herbert, but there were also persons of what we will call simple persons who had their ideas as to what they would like to see. They had their views of what the country ought to be. And I can assure you that many of those persons gave really good ideas and contributions which became part of the total national package of development. There were persons, you'd be surprised to know, that there were persons who would come to my office on a Friday afternoon or my constituency office on a Saturday morning. And yes, although the majority of persons were coming with some problem and wanted to get something done for them, there were persons who would come to say that they had a thought, an idea about something that should be done in the country or in their constituency. And every person who had a contribution to make to St. Kitts-nevis got a listening ear in my administration. There were occasions when some of the ministers were a bit delinquent and didn't really give the person's constituents a good enough hearing, and I heard about it. And you can rest assured that they also heard about it. I've heard so much tonight about my administration. And you have all heard the things that I would, if I had to be making a political speech now, or having to convince persons that really you should be voting for me now, all of these things would come in handy, and I would want to say all of these things. But I'm not going to repeat all of these today. But I want to, in a sense, give you a feeling of what really motivated me in politics. I came from humble beginnings, as you would know, and very poor surroundings. But I want to tell you tonight that even though we were poor in Rosemary Lane, I grew up in Rosemary Lane when it was a dirt road. And we used to play bat and ball, not cricket, out in the street. We had no shortage of balls because there was a breadfruit tree in our yard and one in the neighbor's yard. And we played cricket with breadfruit when they were about this size. And when we wanted to play football, we just waited, we just got bigger breadfruit and played football. I mean, that is the kind of background in which I grew up. But you know, at no time did I ever feel deprived. Then, and even looking back at my childhood, never felt deprived. There were times when we didn't have enough to eat. I remember once time crying at night to my aunt that I was hungry. My mother had gone away to Aruba to work. And that night, it was like there was nothing there to eat. And I was crying because I was hungry. And she said, all right, all I have in the house is some rice and butter. I will cook it, but you have to go downstairs and bring up the coal pot, bring up the coals, bring up the pot, everything. And those days, we had electricity. And the kitchen was outside. And the pots and pans used to be hung up under the steps. So you had nails nailed in and you hang the pots under the steps. And boy, nothing had afraid cockroach and spider like me. And I afraid to go down there. But when hungry bite you, you get courage. And I had to take the hurricane lamp and go down. The thing is, you can't do it in one trip, especially having to take down the hurricane lamp. You bring up the coal pot and you go back down. And as you go under the step and you're going to take down something, you just see a donkey spider shoot cross. But eventually, I brought up the coal pot and all the necessary things. And we had a little landing at the top of the steps. And she light up the coals there and cooked the rice and butter. But I never felt deprived. There were some people who had a great influence in my life that I went to Miss Matthew's school. And I can't remember all the people who went to Miss Matthew's school, but there were two persons who stood out because they were classmates of mine. One was Malcolm Phillip, who became a reverend, and the other was a person who, if you're Pam, you know her, Mavis Phillip. was the other person. And so when you all used to see Mavis willing to go through every alley for me, Mavis and I sit down together in Miss Matthew's school. So we were together even from them. But the next person who had a serious effect on me was Mr. Beach. You've heard persons talk about how committed and dedicated and whatnot. But Mr. Beach was a teacher who insisted, one, you had to be punctual. You had to be on time, right? When you had to line up for assembly, you're not on time, lash over your back, right? And has got to a point now where I actually feel uncomfortable if I go anywhere late. Right? When Mr. Beach taught us arithmetic, and when he gave us sums to do, I would get sometimes 4 out of 5 right, and I get licks. I get a lash. And another fella in the same class doing the same sums get 3 out of 5 right, and Mr. Beach said, well done. Now, the thing is, because Mr. Beach, his approach, if he knew the capability of all of his students, and sometimes he knew that that person got through, he had struggled and fought with it to get there. But he would say, you should do better. You can do better. And so he taught me the importance of doing things thoroughly and doing things right. And that principle was supported at home because I had an aunt who used to work at the library. And as all young people, you said, give them something to do, and you want to go and do something else, and you knock it off quick and you're going. And she would pull me back. And look at it. No, it's not done right. See, that needs to be done. That's not finished. And she used to say, things done by halves are never done right. So it is no wonder that in politics, in government and administration, in doing anything, in cricket, in tennis, once I get into something, I can't do it halfway. Can't do it halfway, because that has been instilled in me from small. The other point I'd like to make in this context, when we see some of the difficulties that the people are facing today, dealing with young people and the difficulties of bringing people up, all of us need to feel some sense of responsibility. Parents, yes, they have their job to do. Teachers, yes, they have their job to do. But some of the influences in my life were people whom I just barely, vaguely knew. I could be disciplined by people who knew my grandmother and who I just knew in passing, coming down the road. Hey, Miss Clark. Right? And I just knew them in passing. But if I was respectful in the street to somebody, those people could discipline me. Things have changed these days. And there is a sort of ownership feeling, well, this is my child and my family. And though we are more conscious of things like child abuse, I think we also need to feel more conscious of the responsibility of all of us who dwell in the global village, so to speak. Because we are all responsible for what our environment becomes. Continuing with this theme about some of the elements of my life. I recall that someone talked about quotations. And I had to smile when that happened. And how we had such fun talking about quotations with Billy, you know. And I just remember, my heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began, so is it now when I am a man. So shall it be when I grow old, or let me die. and so on and so forth. But I always remember Shakespeare's, there is a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will. And frankly, I do not go about beating a drum. Maybe I should, because the evangelists feel that everybody should beat a drum, right? But I never face a day without saying, thank you, Lord, for today's life. Because as the poet said, there is a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will. As a boy growing up, I wanted to be a doctor, yes. And I nearly didn't become one. I already had worked out a backup plan in case that didn't turn out to be. Because the only way it was going to turn out to be was if I won a scholarship. And you heard talked about the scholarship. Today, our youth are privileged to have greater opportunities. And nothing is wrong with that. That is our responsibility as leaders to help to create better opportunities for our people. They have opportunities. But we have somehow got to get our people also to appreciate that opportunities must be taken. Sometimes opportunities lost don't crop up again. And if they do, they crop up sometimes when you're not able to handle them. So we have to get make it a mission to have our young people dedicate themselves to using the opportunities. Right? There's a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will. I wanted to be a doctor. And my mentor was a man by the name of Dr. Well, he wasn't doctor then, but he was name of Bertram Ross. He lived also in Rosemary Lane. Rosemary Lane was an interesting place. One little street, you all know it, short street. And it would appear nothing in there. But let me tell you something, Rosemary Lane produced some people. I mean, some of the top sportsmen of the time you'd find around came from Rosemary Lane. People like Dr. Bertram Ross, St. Clair Phillip, Carlton Phillip, Rags Thomas. Right? You may know them working at the factory and living there eventually, but they were from Rosemary Lane. We grew up together playing in the street there. However, my mentor was Dr. Bertram Ross. He was going to grammar school. And that was a big thing those days. So as a little boy, I admired that. He won the Leeward Islands Cup. No, let me go back before that. He was going to grammar school. And he played football for grammar school. He was a school goalkeeper. He played cricket for grammar school. And later on, when he came back, he was a batsman for St. Kitts-nevis and the Leeward Islands. Well, I became school goalkeeper too, you know. Yeah. But I went one better than him, because after being school goalkeeper, I also turned out and played center forward for the same school. Sam, you would appreciate that. And it's not easy. You come out the goal and you're right up front. Right. And he played cricket. I almost modeled my life on him. And later on, I won a scholarship, studied medicine, and had the same sort of passion for sports. But this was a person in a sense, idolized, seeing him growing up as a bigger boy than me, but going to school and turning out to be the person he was. And so sometimes we never know how our life might impact somebody else's life. And if you stop and think of it, it's a tremendous responsibility, you know. This is why it is so important for us to conduct ourselves in such a way, right, that if people follow us or imitate us, they will be going down the right path. I went to study medicine, and when I graduated, I wanted to be an obstetrician. And I started off working in that direction. Again, I had a wonderful mentor, a gentleman from Guyana. He was a member of Chancellor Hall, as I was, and took a particular interest in me and taught me things that were not usually taught to the persons at that level. That teaching helped me to be able to cope with the job in Anguilla when I was thrown there just coming fresh out of internship. I would not have come back home at that time because I applied for a job in Jamaica to continue in the service where I was so as to go to be a specialist in obstetrics. They said there was only one job available. And though they loved me dearly, a Jamaican wanted that job and I couldn't get it. They said, however, I mean, we love you, we like your work, we're happy with you, so we want to keep you, and we're going to offer you another job. And offer you a position in anesthetics, so you could train, take a job, and you could get training to be an anesthetist. I sucked my teacher. I said, man, me won't be no anesthetist. Right? So I packed my bags and I come home. Right? Yet, that was 1963, right? How many years later? 1970, I returned to St. Kitts as an anesthetist. Huh? Didn't want it then, but years later, I found myself going right into that field. There is a divinity that shapes our ends. Rough hew them how we will. I had no interest in entering politics, really. I mean, politics at that stage of life as a student and coming out, politics was an academic exercise, right? You enjoyed the to and fro of debating and discussing and arguing politics with your colleagues from all over the world, and mainly all over the region. But there was no particular interest in politics. But here is it. I come back to St. Kitts. And I hear there's a demonstration about electricity for floor space. And you know what influenced me with that? There was a certain man in the country, Mr. Harris, he lived in Molyneux, but I ain't going to call the name tonight. And during that period when it was being talked about, I went to Molyneux and I was visiting this man. Lived upstairs, business downstairs, and he's started to add to his building. He has floor, he's got some walls just starting to go up, but they've come and they've measured up the whole thing. No bulb in there yet, no wiring in there yet. But they measure up the whole thing to send him a bill by floor space. Of course, he's cussing and carrying on. And I think it makes sense. So I decide, I can go on this demonstration, I can walk. Young, could just come back, activist, that kind of mentality, but no interest in politics. My good friend Richard Keynes, he was one of the organizers. I wasn't. Gone up the park, and Richard is there waiting for this thing to start. He has this banner with 2 poles. And as we're talking, time to go off, Dr. Herbert was one of the main organizers, Colin Pereira, Courtney Dickinson, right? Michael Powell. So as we start, ready to start, I'm standing with Richard and we're talking. Time to go. Richard unfold the flag. It have 2 poles, and he only could carry 1. So man, I pick up the other one and we're going down the road. The next morning, my picture is on the front page of the Barbados Advocate. In those days, the Barbados Advocate had a St. Kitts publication, right? Man, I'm on the front page of the Barbados Advocate going down with this banner. Richard has a photograph of it in his place. So sorry, you didn't get it to put on that thing tonight. Right? So, there's a divinity that shapes our ends. when I went in the park, I had no intention to carry any banner. Right? But there it was. Right? Well, later on, there was a meeting to discuss whether a political party would be formed. And I was a young doctor with my first car, so you could imagine what life would be like for such a person. But I didn't have any serious commitment that night. So I said, I'm going to drop in by the place and see what's going on. I dropped in by the place, standing in the back. And after a lot of discussion, the people decided to form a party. And next thing I know, somebody called my name. No, I had no discussion with anybody. I didn't give anybody permission to call my name. Somebody called my name, and they nominate me as secretary. And in a split second, I have to decide, am I going to decline or am I going to accept? This divinity must be shaped the end. I accepted. The rest is history. I remember we met as a committee to plan the first political meeting, and I was given the task of talking about the economic development and so on. Boy, I went library. Yeah? I never gave a political speech before. I went library. And the first time I went on a political platform, you should have seen the amount of book I went up there with. Yeah? And the pages were marked. I had a piece of paper stuck in the different pages that I want to refer to. But I went up with a whole bunch of books. The economic situation around the Caribbean, in St. Kitts-nevis, some report from somewhere and so on. I remember I had something about the age groups in the population in St. Kitts-nevis. Gone up there. And as I talk, I refer to this page and this quote, this person and so on. Well, that couldn't go on for long. You had to be better prepared than that. But we fought hard and long, and here we are. But throughout my political life, my political career, there has been one abiding principle that sort of encompass all of the things that you talk about, that you say that I did this and I did that. One abiding principle. Put people first. I get as much satisfaction out of looking out and seeing a cruise ship pull into Port Zante. I get as more satisfaction out of what I'm going to tell you next than even see that, as much as that was a big thing. Because one day I'm walking down Kearn Street and I'm passing the old where the Ministry of Education was building. And as I'm going to the west, and a lady coming down east, and she passed and said, Dr. Simmonds? She said, Lord, Doc, I got to thank you. She said, every day thank you. She said, Doc, I got 3 children. And now, when they go to school, they get their school feeding, and I ain't got to find money to give them no lunch. She said, Lord, Doc, I thank you for that. So let me tell you, I am as pleased with that, probably more pleased about that than about Port Zante. I've had people come to me when I had this Friday afternoon open house at government headquarters and a Saturday morning constituency office. And I had a mother come to me and say that she has a son who's very bright. But when you see this list of books that he got to have, she can't afford the books. She was living in my constituency at the time. She can't afford the books. And she said she didn't have no money and if I could help. I told her, go to laws. get the book list from the boy, go to Laws, and let them write down the cost of each book and bring it to me. And when she brought the books, I said, all right. I wrote a check to RJ Laws and Company for that young man. Years later, I wouldn't have to do that. Because one of the programs which was very dear to my heart, you see, was this Student Education and Learning Fund, the SELF program which gave books for the children. Because if you don't develop the people, you can't develop the country. I am glad that the leader of Unity, Dr. Timothy Harris, spoke about the abolition of personal income tax. I know every PAM student is supposed to mention that first. So it was gratifying to me that it came from Dr. Timothy Harris. Because that was part of the people empowerment. Let people get their resources in their hand and they will help themselves. And today I'm saying, I don't know what the platform is. I'm not I haven't looked in detail at the platform. But it must be to empower the people. Educate them. You must be able to assist people to become effective small business and successful small business people. We have to help to strengthen the private sector in our country. Foreign investment is great. Foreign investment is necessary. But our local investment in our local entrepreneurs, big, small, and in between, is essential for the development of the country. Wait, somebody mentioned about my retiring and that I must have a chair. By the way, Leroy, the chair is there, you know. I still have the chair. And I can assure you, the chair is in mint condition. I have it. I have it. Smitham, I think it was you who talked about the bridge. It was you who talked about the bridge to Nevis. I remember the first time I talked about a bridge to Nevis was at a public meeting in Keon. And I challenge you, researchers, to go back to look at a copy of the Labour spokesman. Go through your archives and find it. Written by the late Fitzroy Bryant. Simmonds is a crazy man. That was the caption. Simmonds is a crazy man. Maybe. Maybe because sometimes I never used to get enough sleep. Mary could tell you about that. Stay up late. Somehow I think a lot when everybody else sleeping, you see, and things quiet. And sometimes if we're writing a speech, the best time to really get going is like 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? So maybe that lack of sleep all these years and so on might make me a crazy man. But I believe in it. And maybe may or may not come in my lifetime. But it has started to come, you know, because we now have the sea bridge. The sea bridge. And that it might be the forerunner of the actual bridge between St. Kitts and Nevis. But more than the physical bridge between St. Kitts and Nevis, I think everybody who has known me over the years know that I have had a passion about the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. It was a source of great disappointment to me that Anguilla was siphoned off. And Nevis was close to trying to go in that direction too. But I'm sure you've heard me say time and time again that as far as I'm concerned, if they talk about going for secession, I can go over there and I might run for office over there. Because I'm from Nevis too. I'm born in St. Kitts. I am born in St. Kitts. My grandfather, which one? Let me put it simple. My grandfather on my father's side. From Nevis. My father from Nevis. I don't know if my grandfather on my mother's side is from Nevis. I never knew him. He died before me. But my grandmother was from Nevis. And Nevis people always used to be coming down and visit her. Hi, Miss Clark. And always visiting her. And when I was growing up, when I was in school, every vacation they used to send me over to Nevis. I used to stay in Bath Village by a husband and wife family ministers, the Reverend Herberts. The two of them were ministers, the Reverend Mr. Herbert and the Reverend Mrs. Herbert in Bath Village. We lived next door to the Tysons, Elston Tyson, Halstead, Shirley Tyson, right, in Bath Village. We used to play in the dirt in the yard together from the Herbert's house and the Tyson's home. We used to go over on the Ursula, which was the boat before the Anslin, which was captained by Captain Anslin, brother's father. So I feel that a close affinity. We are one people. We are one people. Just on two little islands. So that I believe in that coming together, not just the political convenience or coming together of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as one. But that was a first step. Because we all know, we have to accept that we have had a serious political divide in St. Kitts. And we have got to mature beyond that. And it seems to me that there is a divinity that shapes our ends, that we now have the opportunity to bridge that divide here in St. Kitts. There are within of the Labour Party, there is PAM, and there is the CCM from Nevis. This is the opportunity not just for St. Kitts and Nevis to come together, but for St. Kitts and St. Kitts to come together, and for St. Kitts and Nevis to come together. I've been accused quite wrongly. Some people have accused me quite wrongly of, well, you discriminate against this person and you victimize that person. Never did. Never did. But that's the risk you take in politics, that people will say this, that, or the other about you. But that's a common thread historically in politics here. But now, team unity has an important responsibility. First, to win. Can't do nothing if you don't win. First, to win. And secondly, when you win, to take care of the people. Put people first. I'm going to soon finish. Because there are only two other points I want to make. I want to tell you a little story. And then the next thing, I want to say something about Pam. But in the context of this coming together and bridging, or coming together across political lines in St. Kitts, when I was first selected by my party to be the candidate for Central Bastille, I had always run in the East. So I did not campaign, as a rule, in detail in Central. So now I was chosen because I was the leader and there was one seat to be contested. They said, well, if one seat, the leader must go for it. So I was switched from East to Central. So now I had to start doing detailed house-to-house campaigning. And on this particular afternoon, I'm coming down the street. And as I stopped by this gate, I knew the affiliation of the person. I stopped by the gate, called, and this lady opened the door, and she invited me in. I asked the entourage with me to stay outside. I'll go in alone. And I went into the yard, a few steps in and up on the veranda, and then into the house. And as I stepped into the house, on the opposite wall, there was a huge picture of Robert Bradshaw. And I stopped. It's kind of stopped me on the threshold. And the lady said to me, "Oh, you're watching my picture, Mr. Bradshaw?" I said, "Yeah." So she said, come in, close the door." She said, "Have a seat." She said, "I have always voted for Mr. Bradshaw." She said, "Mr. Bradshaw is also a good friend of mine, right? And I've known him for a long time. But Mr. Bradshaw is dead, right? And I have decided that I'm going to vote for you. I haven't started my pitch yet. No, I have decided I'm going to vote for you." She said, "I know you from since you're a little boy in the Methodist church." She said, "I know your auntie. She's member of the Women's League. Right? So I know where you come from. And all I ask you is to do good for the people." So Team Unity family, that's all I ask you. Do good for the people. But win first. Now once again, I have to thank the leadership of the People's Action Movement for organizing this event. And to say to the People's Action Movement and the leaders, once again, I support your involvement in the concept and in the whole program of Team Unity. This is not about any one of us or individual of us. But at the same time, we must remember that Pam has a rich history. And that as a part of Team Unity, you must pull your weight. You have got a responsibility to deliver those areas for which we have been given, over which we have control or responsibility. We must deliver. And so we have to go out and motivate all of our people. PLP can bring theirs. We have got to go out and motivate all our people. And those who say, "Well, we ain't sure if Pam should be in this, and we ain't sure," you got to go find them and bring them out. If any of you ever read Westerns, who here to read Westerns? Louis L'Amour novels, or go to Western movies. When you see them cowboys and they have to do a cattle drive, huh? And when the cattle stampede and they're gone down in some heavy bush and thing, they have to go in there and get them out. We have to be like that. We have got to be motivated, right, to go and bring everybody in. If we don't pull our weight and deliver what we're supposed to deliver, how Team Unity can win? Come on! So we have got to ensure that we do our part and get out there and motivate all those people who have been with us and maybe have got a little lukewarm and have some argument to make and some other thing. Man, no. Well, as you know, I have retired. I have retired from politics. I have retired from medicine. But I have not retired from life. And I got to live here like everybody else. And you can be sure that I will do what I can to make living here better for me and better for you. Right? And this is something that we all got to do. We got to live here, and we have a responsibility to make our country, to make our community, to make our island, to make our street, to make our village better. And to motivate our people to be part of the ongoing development of this country. Thanks again for this wonderful, wonderful tribute.
I would like to say a special happy birthday to Dr. Simmonds, and we are presenting this photograph to you. Happy birthday.